So this presentation is about the pick list and your draft night in general. I'm Nathan.
I'm Calvin.
And joining.
Mason.
All right. So this is saying that we've got your robot wins matches, your scouting wins competitions. Not entirely accurate. Obviously, you can't win a competition if you don't have a good robot. But if all you have is a good robot and you don't have any scouting and you don't have any strategy, that's going to be very, very difficult to win a competition as well. So this is just a phrase I want to introduce to you guys before moving into the rest of the presentation. There's a couple of reasons why. These are the reasons why we're assuming you guys are here. Either you guys are a consistently high-seeded alliance and you want to try and find a strong second pick. You've been a low-seed alliance captain before and you're trying to figure out how to choose alliance partners. Either you're a rising team and you're preparing for when you will be an alliance captain, hopefully in the foreseeable future, or you're a team who is looking to be picked by any of these other teams, and you want to know what goes into the decision making and try and just understand that as best you can. So what if you're a high seed alliance captain? We're looking in the top 1 to 4 seeds going into alliance selections. Generally speaking, when you're going for your first pick, you're going to look for offensive power. If they've got a lot of technical ability, for example, in this game climbing, that's a great plus. But generally, you're going to want at least 2 really powerful scorers on your alliance. And so, assuming that you are a powerful scorer, and because you're in one of the first 4 spots, you're going to want another very powerful scorer to work alongside you. For your second pick, you're looking more for utility. This robot will mainly be playing defense a lot of the time. It is possible to sometimes have a triple offense alliance. However, mainly you'll be looking to have them play defense. And also, for example, in this game, technical ability or like a climber in this game would be very important for that. If you're eating this high, especially consistently, you should definitely be trying to scout, gather as much data as you can, figure out which teams are the best. Which teams do consistently score the highest, which teams play the best defense, etc. This is very important for you if you're going to be in one of these spaces consistently. If you're generally a low seed alliance captain, 5 through 8, prepare for all the different scenarios. Look at a bunch of different robots. Make sure that you know where you rank all of the different robots so that when you match Regis or whoever you send up to the field isn't stuck there waiting, trying to figure out who they should pick next. You should look for something in your first pick that either you don't have. If there is a second really strong offensive score and you can choose them, that's great. Do so. If there isn't, pick a robot that can do something that you can't. For example, I'm not sure how many of you guys were here for the 2020 game, but for example, one robot that went through the middle of the field versus one that went through the trench would be better than, say, 2 robots that went through the trench. For those of you guys who don't know what that game was like, basically there was one cycle that your robot could make that was much faster than others, but couldn't really be used by multiple robots on Alliance at a time. Your second pick, if you're one of these Alliance captains, should just try and fill in the holes. Once again, a good defense bot would be amazing, but if that's not possible, just a good climber or a good defense bot, obviously, hopefully you'll have a good number of options and you'll be able to choose a good one. You should also be scouting if you can, especially if you're consistently ranking. Once again, as an Alliance captain, the scouting is very important and can help you win competitions very incredibly so. Just a lot of times teams aren't actually seeded by the total sum of their abilities, and so especially for defense robots and as you move further down the rankings. So if you've got your own scouting to determine how good each team is, that can be a really, really great blessing for you guys. And finally, if you're not seeded high, there's a couple of things that you can do to try and make sure that your team is picked. You can talk to the teams that are seeded high, figure out what they want. I doubt that there's a single team out there who, if they're approached and asked by another team, hey, what are you looking for in an alliance partner? Or they wouldn't be able to tell you anything. Generally speaking, we just went over on the last 2 slides what they'll mainly be looking for. But there's a bunch of other things you can do. For example, being cooperative in quals and following match strategies, for example. this is a big one. Even if a team is ranked highly during in their competitive ability, sometimes teams will skip over them if they don't think that they'll work with them, or if they think that they'll try and do their own thing in matches instead of following the match strategy. So if you are cooperative in calls and that sort of thing, that can be a really great bonus to you. Aside from that, though, if you're reliable and consistent, if you can do one, even if you can only do one thing, if you can do it very, very well and consistently, that will be a very big boon to you. Because what a lot of teams will be looking for in a second seed alliance is that consistency. For example, once again, going back to this game, a climber. If you have a second seed alliance that, for example, maybe they can't really shoot at all, but they can play a little bit of defense even if they're not good, but maybe they've got a very, very consistent high climb or very, very consistent traversal climb. You're going to want to look at that if you're a high seed alliance captain and just realize that they're a very, very good second pick, simply because they can really help achieve that climbing ranking point, or not even that, but just score a large number of points in comparison to maybe another team that can play some pretty good defense and can climb maybe to mid climb. The difference in that high climb versus that mid climb, or the traversal climb in the mid climb, might really be able to make up for it. Or if they're just an incredible defense ball. So really try and be reliable and consistent, though. If you break down sometimes, that might seriously hurt your chances as a second pick. Picklist formation. So before we were talking a lot about what you guys want to look for, or what you guys want to try and do based off of different selections. How do you actually make those selections? How do you actually determine which teams are better, which ones are better at playing defense, etc., etc., etc.?
All right, so this is our app. It's called Picklist Editor, and we use it every draft night. So it's a way we can import all the data from our scouting system into a spreadsheet. You don't have to use Google Sheets. You could do your own custom solution, just worked for us at the time. So spreadsheets are great because you can visualize things easily and you don't have to do too much programming, but it does also have some limitations. But it also needs to be set up beforehand. It takes a long time to make a powerful sheet like this. Currently, Edwin is the one who works on it, so if you have any questions about that, you can ask him. So we use colors and stuff to organize everything. And this is good because you can spot specifically high numbers and specifically low numbers. And that's useful during draft night when you're looking for different opportunities to pick teams. And we also have other workshops from past years and maybe throughout this weekend about our scouting system if you want to learn more about that. So the meeting logistics are almost as important as the actual data and scouting system. A big problem is finding out who should be at your meeting. Usually it should be most of your strategists and the people who spend their time watching robots. Usually you don't include a lot of your scouts unless your scouts are also strategists. And this is because too many people there will lead to unproductivity, because the meetings will just go slower and you'll spend way too many hours talking about small things. Some logistics are visual aids. You can use photos, and our spreadsheet also has visual aids. And you should always eat dinner during the Picklist meeting after the first day of competition. Because if you eat dinner beforehand, you'll waste a lot of time, and it's just better to eat dinner during the meeting. So, yeah. So there's also the important, while you're choosing your pick list, to think about where you're seated, how you think your seed might change throughout the rest of the qualification matches, and how you plan to strategize during those qualification matches, and what the rest of the leaderboard looks like, and where other teams are seated. And if you have this data, you should really make a pick list. And if you're 12th seed or above, and you have a high chance of getting to choose a team, then you should really, really make one. So another important thing is choosing what data you should be looking at. During this season, these are some of the different data points we looked at. Some of the important ones are down here. I think this is from, no, this is right. I think this is from 2019, but yeah, so here's so LFM over here, that means the last 4 matches. So you can see how they've been doing really recently. And you also, it's important to look at percentages and stuff and how the teams did over the entire competition. You should also think about the first picks versus second picks, because usually you'll have different criteria for your second picks, like being able to do a unique skill, like Nathan mentioned before. And there's also do not picks, which is what DNP stands for. This is when a team just does not fit your criteria, and you should not choose them. And you shouldn't use this too much, but sometimes there's a team that you know you shouldn't pick. You should also keep in mind what your role is, and if you might not have the chance to choose the first pick, and how your role might be if you're a first pick of another team. So you should also make at least a certain length of the pick list. You should do 24 for regionals and 32 for champs, because you need 4 robots for champs. And you should also not have the meeting be too long. If it's too long, then it starts creeping into the nighttime, and you won't be very rested the next day. And you should also predict what other alliances might look like if you're seated pretty high, because that might influence who you're going to pick for your team. So our initial pick list, you can meet with a known alliance partner. A lot of times we can plan it out with another team that we know is going to be, they're going to pick us or we're going to pick them. Then we look through all the data. Some of the tools we use is the data from our scouting system, some match videos from the competition and qualification matches. So these graphs, for example, we can see how the robots did on the different matches, how it varies over time. Anecdotes from our stand strategists and observations from them too. And you should really be discussing with everyone at the picklist meeting and what they think, what they saw about the teams. And eventually you should come on a decision, and you can change this over time, but you need to make decisions about where they should be placed. You can give pros and cons of how teams are and what things you saw that were good and what things you saw weren't so good. And you can also play devil's advocate. This is important. If you saw something that's really bad, it could affect you later on, you should definitely bring it up. And eventually you should come up with a group census and decide on something. And throughout the entire meeting, you shouldn't stay stuck on one team and one placement for a long time. You should maintain productivity and make sure you're getting through the pick list. So, Nathan, you want to show them our pick list?
Yeah, so we're going to show you what our pick list looks like, just what our app looks like. Obviously, all of the team numbers in here are going to be false, along with the data, just for general reasons. Edwin, do you want to take them through this?
Yeah.
Just.
So basically, this is the main spreadsheet of the Picklist Editor. And you can see on the left we have a list of teams, and then the rest of the screen is filled with all of the data points for each of those teams. And then we have several categories of data from our scouting data on the top. And there's also the order numbers where we can choose what order we want a team to be on our pick list. So we can actually change one of these. So if I change this to like 2.5, then it'll move up by itself. And that's all done using some scripts with Google Sheets. And all of the data that appears on the rest of the screen does come straight from our scouting data. Oh yeah, so usually our raw data will look something like this. So, yeah. So this comes straight from our scouting system. It creates a file that we can just import into the spreadsheet, and then we can use formulas to go through that data and get it onto the main editor. Yeah.
Do you want to take a photo of the full list?
Sure, yeah.
If you're interested, there's also more pictures and stuff than our scouting white paper from this year.
Question? Or did you have your hand up or?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, does anyone have any questions about either our pick list or about any of the things that we mentioned before about your own draft night?
Yeah. You mentioned do not fix. Are there any certain like things that will automatically throw a team into like do not fix?
Generally not immediately, simply because we don't tend to put that many teams on there. At most, maybe 2 or 3 in a competition. If a team, for example, is going in cap in the vast majority of their matches, for example, that might put them there. Aside from that, though, unless they are actively detrimental to a good number of teams that they are on an alliance, for example, not scoring any balls, not playing defense on the opponent, and in fact clogging up their own team in an alliance consistently, those are really the only things that would put them there for us. Aside from that, though, pretty much every team we're going to rank.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No? Alright then. If there's no more questions, I guess you guys can come up and ask us afterwards. We're going to be standing right here. Aside from that, though, if there's no more questions.
Besides like numbers and everything, how much would you say that picking your teammates relies on like networking or just who your draft team wants to?
A surprisingly large amount, especially for, say, a second picks, especially just because when our drive team is talking with a bunch of people, how well they work with our drive team for match strategy and stuff, that is obviously very important. Generally, we have our drive team talk a little bit about these sort of things with our strategists, but it will influence it. More so if our drive team has a bad experience with the team, then that may be a reason why we might rank them slightly lower than we would have originally. But aside from that, it won't normally be a deal breaker no matter what, but it is definitely something that's taken into consideration. Any more questions or? All right then. I guess this presentation's over then. I believe some more others are still going on if you guys want to catch any of those. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to just come up and ask us.